Okumana Aslekoreka Mano Viran Prabhavinu Bhadiravidvantah Saramswahavahe Namaha Sambhavaya Mayudbhavaya Namaha Sankaraya Maheskaraya Namaha Shivaya Shivataraya Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Shivakaram Urvarukam Yoganjavadito Mukhiyamamrita.
Now,
Hello guys, this is KK Singh, Vedic Astrologer, and welcome to my YouTube channel Om Astro Jyoti. Today we are having a wonderful guest with us, Mr. Fernando Raul from Puerto Rico. He is a Spanish as well as an English astrologer in the Western countries, but he is doing Vedic astrology. So, Fernando ji, I invite you to my channel and please just give the viewers a little bit of introduction regarding yourself and how did you start the journey and what inspired you to get into Vedic astrology.
well, first of all, Kaushal, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really an honor, and I always like to collaborate with people who are, eager to do interviews and talk about astrology. So I know astrology more or less for 10 years now. It might not seem a long time, but, I'm familiar with astrology for at least a decade now. But professionally speaking, doing it in a serious way about 5 years, I would say. And here where I live, the only real astrologer was a Vedic astrologer. So that was my first introduction to what I consider traditional astrology, right? He was trained in southern India by old Vedic teachers, parampara, that from a Kannada language region.
Kannad, yes.
Yes.
Southern, from Karnataka, yes.
Correct. And that was my first introduction as a youth, right? And then I studied with other people, specifically American astrologers trained in India, some others trained in the States. And I've been practicing ever since seriously, professionally with my website since 2016, 17. I have my own YouTube channel where I do videos in Spanish because there's not a lot of good Vedic astrology content in Spanish. So I'm doing that. I also do some English interviews, some English material. And I'm also doing other types of traditional astrologies, traditional Greek astrology, traditional European Renaissance astrology, and traditional Islamic astrology. So I'm trying to do the traditional astrological work because, it brings us closer to the essence and the roots of the tradition.
100%. This is so beautifully explained by you, and yes, people watching this out, do not go into the modern astrology or anything which is like superficial. Go back to the roots and see that the roots are deep rooted and you can get a lot of information from there. Okay, sir. So today actually we have Fernando ji in our channel. He will be speaking about the Panch Maha Purush Yoga, especially the Sasha Yoga given by Saturn. So on this, I would like to ask you, like, how the yoga is formed. What is your experience, and how is the yoga come into operation in the individual charts? Yes, sir.
Sure. So let's start etymologically. I always like to start with clients and students with the words, right? Where they come from, right? Sasha yoga, yoga means union, among other things, right? And Sasha means rabbit or hare. Now, I don't know Sanskrit. I don't know if you know Sanskrit, but I don't know. I recognize Sanskrit and I can speak it like a little boy. But the idea is that Sasha yoga alludes to the union of the rabbit or the hare, right? And that is one of the Panch Maha Purusha yogas applied to the Taragrahas, which are the 5 starry planets, which would be obviously Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars, right? Or Buddha, Shukra, Shani, Guru, and obviously
Mangal.
Yeah. So basically, this is Pancha Maha Purusha yogas means the Pancha 5 Maha great Purusha person yoga union, the unions of the 5 great people that apply to planets that are in specific locations in a chart. Now, so we are dealing with the Sasha Yoga, which applies to Saturn, right? And the Sasha Yoga applies to the idea of somebody who has Saturn in a specific position from Lagna, right? So for the formation of Sasha Yoga, Saturn has to be either Swakshetra, Mula Trikona, or Usha, or exalted in angular houses or Kendra houses. What does that mean? So Saturn has to be in Libra, in Capricorn, or in Aquarius, right? In any of those degrees, right? In any of the 30 degrees of Libra, in any of the 30 degrees of Capricorn, in any of the 30 degrees of Aquarius, right? So that's the first
Correct.
necessity from an essential dignity point of view. Now, from an accidental dignity point of view, the planet has to be in an angular house or a Kendra house, which would be obviously Baba 1, 4, 7, or 10. So that is the most basic definition that you need for a Sasha Yoga to manifest itself. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter. Other things will calibrate the yoga to a greater or a lesser degree. But for a Maha Purusha of Saturn, a Maha Purusha Yoga of Saturn, you need one Saturn in Libra, Capricorn, or Aquarius. That would be Tula, Makara, or Kumbha. And you need it to be in 1, 7, 4, or 10. Okay? And that, in principle, only in principle, from an introductory point of view, will create Sasha Yoga. And Sasha, as I said, means rabbit, means hair. So when you have Saturn in good dignity, you know, Shani is the lord of time and karma. So in a sense, when you have Sasha Yoga, the idea is that Saturn will be less slow, right? Not more fast, but less slow. Just think of a hair of a rabbit, right? The rabbits are always looking out for hunters. They're always looking out for other animals that might eat them. They're always looking out to take care of themselves. So Shani, being the natural Shudra of the planetary cabinet, will survive and will be successful by doing that. And we're going to read more about how this yoga will manifest itself. But just by this metaphor, we can start understanding the idea of how this Saturn in good dignity in angular houses or Kendra houses will manifest itself. So, you know, from an introductory point of view.
Correct. So this is wonderfully explained by you. And one thing I would also like to add on here, like when all the Mahapurush yogas, I have seen one common thing which is happening in all the Mahapurush yoga, like the planets which are sometime retrograde, sometime stationary, sometime moving forward, like Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Saturn, and Mars, they only form the Panch Maha Purush yoga. Rather, only these five, Rahu and Ketu, which are always in the retrograde motion, do not contribute to this yoga. Neither Sun and Moon contribute to this yoga because they are always forward moving. Now, this when you have given the introduction, I would like to ask another question to you. Like, the introductory part was wonderful, but if say suppose if anyone is having the Sasha yoga in his or her chart, so what kind of a result or what kind of a effect will that native will be feeling?
Okay.
Say for example, just one more thing I would like to tell. Say for example, if the Sasha yoga is happening on the ascendant only, then the effect will be different. If the Sasha yoga will be happening on the 10th house, then the effect will be different. So I would like to ask you, like, if you can elaborate on briefly on these effects on where the Sasha yoga is taking place, then it would be very beneficial for the audience.
Cool. When in doubt, go to the classics, right? So I would tell you first from the classical point of view, then I will tell you from the theoretical point of view, and then I will tell you from my experience. Okay?
Okay.
The two most specific references that we have of Sasha Yoga come from Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra and Faladipika. right? So I'm going to read both
Right.
quotes so people can get an idea of that, because it's very important. Sometimes on these YouTube videos, people just talk about the yogas and all that, but they seldom read the books, right? And you know, Faladipika is a more, from a historical point of view, is a more reliant text because it's more integral and it's newer. Brihatarashara Shastra, on the other hand, it is, you know, there's a lot of confusion because there are a lot of texts that allude to it, and there's a lot of ideas of where it came from. Right?
BPHS, Brihat Parashar Hora Shastra, a person cannot decode by itself. A guru is needed for that, because
Correct.
BPHS is everything is written in the code. So
Yeah.
that code breaker is a guru.
Yeah. The
So
thing
if a
is,
person,
the thing is that there are different paramparas. So, you know, one parampara
right.
will say something. I mean, you live in Calcutta. So if you go to, and that's in the eastern part of India, but if you go to the western part of India, there's going to be another parampara that's going to tell you it's another way. And if you go to southern India with the Dravidians and the other people, they're going to tell you another thing. And if you go to north, they're going to tell you another thing. So yeah, that's true. But the idea is that different paramparas, they say different things. And that's been my experience. But yeah,
And every parampara and every parampara is correct. When you are looking from their angle, their perspective, it is also correct. If you are looking from my angle, my perspective, it is also correct. That means everything is possible.
Yes.
So that becomes more difficult for a new beginner in astrology to grasp and apply it.
And also, it's never recommended for beginners, neophytes, really raw beginners to start with the classics, because they're going to get confused. You know, you need to get the basics first before you get into the classics. And it should be at first with a guru or somebody who has a lot of experience with them, because people will get confused due to the, you know, modern perspective that we have in relation to the classical traditional texts that there are, right? So let me just read, this is from chapter 75, Shloka 2022, from the version I have, which is basically the version, this is the second volume translated by Dr. G.S. Kapoor. And basically it says, the Sasha native has small-sized teeth and face, but his body is not small. He is valorous. He has a slender waist and beautiful thighs. He is wise and enjoys wandering in forest and mountains. He is well versed in the loopholes, weaknesses of the enemy. He's lively, virile, and fond of women. He usurps other people's wealth. He has marks of mala, garland, veena, mridyana, musical instruments, and weapons in his hands and feet. This is alluding to Samudrika. Hasta Samudrika, or the feet Samudrika specifically. He rules happily over several parts of the earth, and then leaves for his heavenly abode at age 70. So this is what Parashara says. So as you can see, it says a lot of good things, specifically for a natural Krura Graha like Saturn is. He basically alludes to several facial features, but you know, you have to take that into confluence with other parts of the chart that talk about, you know, the face, like the second house, the second lord, the first house, the Lagna, to a certain degree, the Lagnesha, to a certain degree, Brishava, to a certain degree, Shukra also. He's valorous, the idea that, remember, when Krura Grahas or malefic planets are well dignified, they become, even though Saturn is tamasic, you know, when they are in good dignity, they become somewhat of sattvic to a certain degree, in the sense that they will manifest their tamasic nature in a positive way. Okay, so at the same time, they also talk about slender waist and beautiful thighs. You also have to see that with confluence. You have to see also Danus Rashi. You also have to see to a certain degree the 11th house and all that. Then he says he's wise and enjoys wandering in forests and mountains. Obviously, a strong Saturn will be intelligent, will be smart, will be very capable, right? Now, if it's in Libra, it will manifest in a certain Venusian way. If it's in Capricorn or Aquarius, it will manifest in other ways. So there are certain degrees that we have to take into consideration with that definition. He's well versed in loopholes of his enemies or weaknesses. This is very important because he's later going to say that he usurps other people's wealth. What I've noticed is that when Saturn is in good dignity, and if it's in angular houses forming this Sasha Yoga, you know, Saturn becomes great due to his work, due to his tenacity, due to his persistence, due to his realism. But what I've noticed is that all the classical texts allude to the idea that he will form relationships with powerful people, with rich people, with influential people. Remember, this is the Shudra. This is basically the worker. This is the slave. So how can a slave or a worker become powerful, rich? Associating himself with a powerful person, a powerful lord, a powerful leader, boss, CEO, whatever. The point is that a strong Saturn will work to getting what he wants through other people. So the boss will not use the worker will use the boss. So you have to take that into consideration in terms of how these classical translations might relate to modern concepts. Then he says he is lively, virile, and fond of women. So he's going to be cool with that. But this is quite interesting because Saturn usually is not related to that unless he's
exactly.
maybe if he's in Libra. What I've read with Libra is that if Saturn is in Libra, he's going to manifest quite differently if he is Swakshetra or Mula Trikona in Kumbha or Makara. So in Tula Rashi, Shani will manifest a lot of Venusian qualities. And what I've read is that he's going to associate himself with lower caste women, right? Women from lower castes, women that are from other strata of society. And I kind of seen that, right? That does not mean that he's going to marry an ugly woman, just a woman that is not necessarily from his own, social status. Okay. So then we already read that he usurps other people's wealth. And then he says we have the Hasta Samudrika allusion, which we would have to touch that with other sort of expertise and focus. I don't have that, so I'm going to just jump that. And then he says he rules happily over several parts of the earth and then leaves for his heavenly abode at age 70. This is the idea that good planets show good results. So good planets, good dignified planets also might show longer dignity. So this is what Parashara says. So let's go to what Mantreshwar has to say in Faladipika, right? And in Faladipika, it's a little shorter. He says, I don't have the correct quote specifically from the shloka, but it says, the person born in Sasha Yoga will be praised by one and all. He will have faithful attendants and be strong. He will be the head man of the village or king. By disposition, he will be a crooked man, having an eye on the wives of others. He will rob others of their wealth to keep himself happy. So here we yes, sir. Go ahead.
No. You complete this. Then I'll add.
Sure.
Okay.
So here we kind of see a certain confluence. Then he says he will be praised by one and all. Obviously, well-dignified planets create well-dignified results. So he is going to have recognition for others. No matter any planet in good dignity will receive some sort of recognition. Will have faithful attendants and be strong. So this is very interesting because Saturn being the Shudra says he's going to have attendants and be strong. Obviously, a well-dignified malefic is always strong, is always positive to do what you have to do from a constructive point of view. Then attendant, so the attendant will have attendance, so he will have help from others. Then it says he will be headman of the villages or a king. I've read this in other Islamic references, so this is very true. You know, the idea of a strong malefic gives qualities of leadership. Then it says by disposition, he will be a crooked man having an eye on the wives of others. Obviously alluding to the malefic qualities of the Tamasic of Chani Graha. So this is always there, even though malefics are well dignified. Remember this, even though malefics might be well dignified in a chart, they will give good results in theory, but they're still malefics. So you have to take that into consideration when you're thinking about drishtis and all that, okay? And then it says he will rob others of their wealth to keep himself happy. Once again, this is the one of the most important things. Both Faladipika and BPHS, Brihatarashara Horashastra, says the same thing. This will be a person who will achieve greatness, connecting himself with influential people and having that influence dripping by for him. It comes by to him. So take that into consideration. You know, the Shudra, well dignified, will work with influential people and will take that influence for himself. He will work to achieve what he wants through other powerful people. Now, this is what the classics say. So we should stand here and remember, we have to know what the tradition has says about this thing, to know where we stand in the tradition now, to know where we're heading in the tradition in the future. Now, I want to talk about the practical point of view and my experience. But you wanted to say something first before I continue?
Okay. So I was trying to tell you the point on which it was mentioned that he will be enjoying the companies of lot of women. Definitely, this is very true for Libra Rashi.
Sure.
But this is absolutely, like these things get very difficult in Capricorn, especially not
Yes, you're
Aquarius,
right.
I would say,
Classic,
because
classic.
Capricorn is that sign which put Saturn into tremendous work. And there, even if the person is having the Sasha Yoga, I have seen in many charts, in many cases, they were having the Sasha Yoga in the 10th house in Capricorn. Okay, but the result, the person was not even enjoying the female company at all. There was an exception because the thing is, he was too much into himself working and working and working. So I saw the chart. I saw the chart of the gentleman. So he used to say that he used to work for 14 or 16 hours a day.
Wow. Normal.
So it was means when I was doing his chart, I was literally I was shocked. I said 16 hours a day. Well, yes, I do it, and 24 into 7. That means no rest even on Sunday or Saturday.
Yeah, some people do
So
that.
exactly. So yes, sir. So then you can move forward with what you were saying.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that because when Shani, you've probably heard this, the idea that Shani is the only planet that always gives but delays. And people have to take into consideration this because some people think it's just magical results, but Shani gives through work. So you have to work for what Shani will give you, right? So whenever Shani is well dignified, being Swakshetra, being in Mula Trikona, here specifically in his own domiciles of Capricorn and Aquarius, you will work a lot, right? And you will be very familiarized with work. So that result that you're telling me is very reasonable, right? Now, what I want to say is, how can we grade this Sasha Yoga? Because not all Sasha Yogas are going to be the same. So
Exactly.
I just want to say this for people who are watching. Wherever it is, 1, 4, 7, or 10, it's going to be strong. If it's Swakshetra, Mula Trikona, or Ucha, okay?
Swashetra.
So you have to take that into consideration. Now, if we take into consideration the principles of Digbala, so Saturn will have directional strength in the 7th, and it will not have directional strength in the 1st. So there we have a certain allusion to the idea that in the 7th, he's going to be stronger than in the 1st from that point of view. So, but even if you have Saturn in 1-7 axis, that will always cause trouble with relationships, romantic, professional. And not in a bad way, but it's going to be friction, okay? So from a certain point of view, in the 7th is better than in the 1st, but even if it's in the 1st, it will give good results, but probably relationships will tend to suffer, right? And the classical thing here is that if it's in Capricorn and you either have a Karkata or a Makara Lagna, then, relationships are going to have a stress, right? Now, if it's in the 10th, it is very good. Any planet very close to the midheaven is always good if it's in good dignity. If it's in a bad dignity, surprisingly, it's also going to be good, but in a funny, weird way, as I've seen. But it has to be very close to the midheaven. In the 4th, whenever a planet is in the 4th, in Maha Purusha Yoga, I've noticed that it's going to give really good results, but they're going to be private results. They're going to be personal results. They're going to be results that are not going to be very visible to the public life of the individual. It's going to be more of a domestic meaning. So you gotta measure how these things are going to appear, because you need to know the significations of the houses. You need to know where the lords of the houses are, specifically if we're dealing with Venus here. Obviously, because if Saturn is in Swakshetra Mula Trikona, then he is in his own domicile. But when it's in Libra, which some astrologers don't talk about a lot, you got to also see where Venus is to see how it is. Now, how will this manifest in terms of my experience? Well, as I said, work is going to be very present. A lot of realism, a lot of no nonsense type of mentality. This type of person will not give such importance to aesthetics. Although in Libra he might, but in Capricorn and Aquarius, you know, he's more concentrated on substance than on appearances. And then you got to measure it, right? You got to measure the yoga. I use traditional Greek techniques to apply to some Vedic concepts. And in my experience, and according to classic text, you know, in a day chart, Saturn will be more constructive, right? It will be, and if it's in a good dignity here in Sasha Yoga, it will create more constructive results, more positive results. If it's a night chart, it will create more disruptive results. So you got to take that into consideration, which is a Greek precept from sect, okay? Another thing that you have to take into consideration from Vedic qualities, if you have Sasha Yoga and the moon is in Kendra houses also, it makes the yoga stronger. Another thing that you have to take into consideration, the Lagnesha. Where is the Lagnesha? It doesn't matter if you have Panch Maha Purush yogas. It doesn't matter if you have 2, 3 Panch Maha Purush yogas. If the Lagnesha is in trouble, you're not going to enjoy that fruit, okay?
Exactly.
The Lagnesha, where is it? Because if you have a debilitated Lagnesha in the 8th, in the 6th, even in the 12th, you know, you're going to have difficulties. And it's like the person who's born rich who has drug problems, or the person who has a wonderful wife but is addicted to going out with other wives and other women. You know, that's the thing. The Lagnesha will be important, okay? Now, if the Panch Maha Purusha yoga is associated to the Lagnesha, then that is going to be a very good Panch Maha Purusha yoga. For example, if you have a Panch Maha Purusha yoga of Sasha yoga in the first, like being Saturn in Capricorn or in Aquarius, it's a great yoga because the Lagnesha is the Panch Maha Purusha
Saturn
yoga.
himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, if it's if you have a Libra Lagna, it's even better because you have a Yoga Karka in the first, right?
Exactly.
And if you have a Yoga Karka in the first with Saturn in Libra, which only happens once every 30 years, and you have Venus in good dignity, let's say he is, for example, I don't know, maybe he is in Libra also in the first, then even though there's going to be friction there in conjunctions, but it's going to be a great one, okay? So take that into consideration. Right. Now, there are other things that you have to take into account, like the Dasha sequences, that sort of thing, because if you have the Panch Maha Purusha yoga and Saturn Dasha comes in very early, then you're not going to enjoy that yoga. Your parents are probably going to enjoy it more than you are, especially if you're a baby. And if it comes very late in life, you're not going to enjoy that. Even though there might be some results, you're just not going to enjoy that because you're not in the prime of your life. And at the same time, you got to do longevity calculations that people today don't do it, which is the first thing you should do. But you know, due to the thing of, even though in India it's still happening, in Western countries people don't go near that, but you got to do the calculation, okay? And another thing, go for it.
Sir, the timing is very important because it depends upon the Desh, Kal and Patra. Because if the person, if he is not getting it in the prime time, the Kal, then whatever Mahapurush yoga you have, it is not going to fructify good result. Because everything will be coming so late that in that moment of time, people usually, I don't know, after 60 or 70 years age, do they have desires to build something new? I don't know. Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and other qualities that you have to take into consideration. For example, if I mentioned the idea, if the Sasha yoga is happening and the moon is in angular houses, then it gets stronger. Because why? Right. Because the Sasha yoga is also happening from Chandra Lagna. If you have the sun also in an angular house, then it's also happening from Surya Lagna. Then taking into consideration the precepts of ay Dios mío, what's the name? Sujanaga chakra, the idea of the three wheels. Sudarshan. Thank you. Then you have that confluence of everything happening from the three lagnas. Okay.
Right.
At the same time, you have to take into consideration the relationship between the lagna lord and the planet that is having the Panch Maha Purusha yoga. Are there in affinity? Are there fighting? Because you have to take this in consideration. If you have a Panch Maha Purusha and the Lagnesha is in aversion to that planet, then there are going to be problems. Now, another thing that can happen, which is something that is seldom discussed on YouTube videos, is the phenomenon of, everybody knows about Nishavanga, right? But not everybody talks about Uchavanga, right? The idea that, for example, if Saturn is in Aquarius and you have the sun in Leo, there are going to be problems. There are going to be problems because they're two strong planets looking at each other. Now, they're going to create good results, both of them, but those good results are going to come into friction, right? And yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In this point only, I would like to ask one more question. If say, for example, if the same thing is happening, the Uch Bhanga Rajyug, the Bhang of the Rajyug, that means the cancellation of the exaltation point. Say, for example, Saturn, if it is in Aquarius and if it is conjunct with Sun, now the thing is, by that technicality, we can say that yes, it is coming in the angular house or the Kendra house from the Sun, but it is coming with the Sun. Then what is your interpretation in that?
Whoa, go repeat it again. I didn't understand it. But once again, go ask it again.
Okay. Say, for example, as we know that if the Mahapurush yoga is happening in the Kendra house, okay, and if it is in Kendra with Sun also and Moon also, then it becomes a very powerful Mahapurush yoga.
Yes, sir.
But if the Kendra house are 1, 4 and 7, 1, 4, 7 and 10, if Sun comes near to Saturn in the same house, then what is going to be the effect?
Oh, great. Now I understand. Yeah, the effect is going to be there, but the challenge is going to be bigger, right? Remember, Shani and Surya combinations, I have that, and I've seen it.
You have that in your chart?
Yeah, yes, I have a Surya Shani conjunction from the sidereal point of view.
Okay, so you have that in your chart. Okay, yes. Wonderful.
No, but it's not a Panch Maha Purusha. It's not in a good dignity. But the idea is that what I want to show is that whenever you have combinations of Surya and Shani, the king and the Shudra, right? The king Kshatriya and the Shudra, there's going to be a lot of friction because they are, son and father separated. They have a lot of history of not being congenial
cordial to each other.
Yes, from the Vedic point of view. It's weird because from the traditional Hellenistic point of view, it's not like that, which is one of the biggest differences. But what I want to say is that there's a lot of friction because you are both a king and a servant, right? You're both a boss and an employee, and it creates a lot of friction. But the idea is that if you can combine them together, and that has to do a lot with dignity, the reward is going to be really big. So even though there's going to be friction, both planets in, let's say, for example, because if it's Juti in Kumbha, Rashi, Shani, and Surya, Surya is going to suffer, right? And if it's Juti in Leo, then Saturn is going to suffer. But if you
Saturn is going to suffer.
If you have that opposition, that mutual aspect between them, there's going to be a lot of friction, but the results are going to be good if you work them out. Now, other qualities that you have to take into consideration is if that Saturn in Sasha Yoga is also participating of other benefic yogas, right? Because you got to see, it's not only that it has to be in Aquarius, Capricorn, or Libra in angular houses, you have to see the Lagnesha, you have to see Surya Lagna, you have to see Chandra Lagna, you have to see the Dashas, you have to see also the idea of it's involved in other benefic or malefic yogas, help from others, the Lagnesha, where it's an association to the Lagna, and obviously, you know, the idea of what the person wants in terms of his free will. Remember, you know, what does the person want? Because sometimes people have good yogas, but they have bad yogas, and they concentrate more on the bad yogas than in the good yogas, and you other have the other aspect. So it's not that cookie cutter recipe for everyone. You know, you gotta see the chart. Every chart is different. Hence, you gotta do a specific, unique interpretation, and you have to see the chart from a holistic point of view. Always looking for confluence, and that is what it's going to how you're going to qualify all Panch Maha Purusha yogas to a certain degree.
Exactly. So everything which whatever you have said is actually very logical, coming from the you know, exactly on the logic, and everything is explained very beautifully, sir.
Thank you.
So I don't have any points to add on here. My all the queries, and I guess the people out there, all the audiences and all the viewers, definitely ask any question in the comment section below. If you have any question regarding your Mahapurush yoga or any other yogas, then we will definitely try to answer, me or Fernando ji. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say something, Shaukat. I mean, the idea here is that you know, other Pancha Maha Purusha yogas, specifically Venus, Jupiter, they just manifest themselves. It's just like a flower, right? The idea, for example, Hamsa yoga means a swan, you know. Malavya yoga is like, Malavya yoga alludes to a place in India where they did jewelry a long time ago. So they're just beautiful yogas. They just manifest themselves. Bhadra yoga, I believe, is one of the most powerful ones. Rushaka is violent, but it's constructive. But when we come to Sasha, you got to work it. It's like you have a car, right? A beautiful car, but you got to drive the car, right? It's not like, I have a car. No, you got to drive the car. You got to use the car. It's like a tool. Like you have, you know, you have the best. I do a lot of, I'm starting to do metal detecting. I like doing that. I'm starting. So if you have a Sasha yoga, you have the best metal detector. You know, it's like $1,500, very expensive, but you're not using it.
But you have to do it.
Exactly. Because if you have a normal Saturn and you're using it, then it will work. But if you have a great Saturn and you're not using it, it won't work. It's like the box of crayons, right? Sasha yoga is the box of crayons of 148 crayons, right? The type of box that every kid wanted to have when you were in kindergarten, right? The idea is that you have 144, but if you're using 2 crayons or 3, whatever, then you know you're not maximizing itself. Then if you have a normal dignity Saturn, you have 10 crayons, and you're using all of them, then you're maximizing it. So remember, Saturn teaches us a lot, and Saturn is very strong, but Saturn is the planet that will depend most of it on ourselves, our realism, our free will, and what we do with it. So Saturn is very tricky. Saturn is not like other planets. That's why some people say that Saturn is the greatest planet and all that. I wouldn't say that, but it's a planet that is very particular in terms of its qualities in relation to others. Because even though all planets are different, Saturn has a lot of qualities that make it unique. And this will apply to Sasha Yoga. Go ahead.
Exactly. Because Saturn's main karakatva is the karma. So without having the karma, you cannot enjoy any food. The thing is like that. So this is very straightforward for Saturn, that you do the work, I'll reward you. You don't do the work, I'm not going to do anything. So whatever benefic yogas I am creating, but you have to work it out. So that is the thing. So yes, so this was the wonderful interview with Fernando ji. So definitely, viewers, if you have any questions, then definitely do write us in the comment section below. The link will be shared with you, and let's see. So another time we are going to have Fernando ji for any other yogas soon. So definitely we can ask him for more information, sir.
Super cool, super cool. And once again, Kaushal, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.